Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking over. It means a lot. You guys keep looking. If you guys keep looking, I'll keep making. And today, I think it's time that we revisit. Obviously, I did a season ranking a while ago, way back at the start of my channel. But I feel like now that I've kind of had my opinions change over time, it's time to revisit that topic. So I'm going to go through all 41 seasons and rank them one by one. Stick around to the end to find out what next video will be on. I think you guys are going to like it a lot. Join our Discord. It's in the description. We have tons of fun. People ask me questions. People can give me video suggestions. People can just talk to me about the channel. It's where you guys can talk to each other. People, share all types of, links and articles about Survivor there. It's actually really cool there. So join that in the description. I believe it's the top link, if I'm not mistaken. 72% of you guys who are watching this channel are not subscribed. Let's change that. It's easy and it's free. And that's it. Let's rank these seasons. Now, before I start, some of you are unfamiliar with the idea of an opinion, so let me try and give my best definition of one. It's something that you feel. It's not something that is going to affect anybody else. There's no need to get offended, and if you get offended, feel free to leave a nice, long, and lengthy hate comment. In fact, please leave several, because it helps the video perform even better. No, but in all seriousness, guys, there's no need to get offended. I know this comment section is, going to be filled with people just saying, oh, how do you have X or Y at this spot in the list? And obviously we all disagree. It's one of the hallmark things about being a Survivor fan is liking certain seasons while others do not. But a lot of you guys had suggested that I do this video topic, so if you guys want me to do something else, let me know in the comments and I can get that done. And without further ado, let's do this season ranking. So this is 1 through 41, 41 being the worst, 1 being the best. We will go from worst to best. Let's go. At number 41, this is the only season that I have not been able to watch in its entirety. I have not watched Thailand. Thailand is our number 41. I have not been able to watch Thailand in its entirety. I literally cannot get through more than a few episodes without starting to literally puke and hurl. It's so bad. I will never watch it unless, well, no, I'll probably watch it soon, but I would never show it to somebody. And if I had to show somebody a season that the show is not about, that's not what Survivor is, I would show them Thailand. Thailand is the worst representative for a season, and I feel like therefore it needs to be the worst season. For the second worst season at 40, I feel like I need to get the second best. The season with the second least amount of good things, right? So Thailand has nothing good, really. I mean, except for maybe a dominant winner, even then it's not that fun to watch. Then I feel like Fiji to me is the season that has the second least amount of good things. Fiji has 2 good characters, whereas you could say Brian Haddock is a good character for Thailand, but even then, it's just not. It's not it. So I feel like Fiji does suffice there, where it does have a clear fan favorite who is a good player, which is not something that Thailand can say. With Jan and Helen being your quote unquote fan favorites from that season, and so I do think that Fiji does deliver. Also, on top of that, Fiji at least has like a big moment, whereas in Thailand does not. Fiji obviously has the gigantic car curse as well as the final 9 at Guaro boot. In my personal opinion, I do think that the start of the middle era of Survivor, like that, for me, I feel like that's the Ed Guaro boot. I feel like that's the first time where we see people scrambling. Like before that, it was just, oh well, I have a plan, I have my alliances. Do you want to vote with me? Yes or no? And at the Ed Guaro boot, it was, does he have an idol? Let's vote accordingly. And they end up, creating a strategy known as using a safe vote. And so I feel like just overall that was such a great episode, but it was such a standalone great episode, because then we go right back to the slumps, which is not fun to watch. But I do think that this season kicks off the middle era of Survivor, and so I do have respect for it in that regard for sure. The next season I have on the list is Ghost Island. I definitely feel like Ghost Island for me is a season that is just has nothing. At least Fiji has like 2 gigantic moments with Dreams not going through with his deal, and then we also have the gigantic vote at the Ed Guaro boot. Ghost Island has a subpar pre-merge and probably one of, if not the worst post-merge in the show's history. And I really think that it's a perfect example that really a new school season should always be more entertaining than an old school season, and the only exception to that rule is Ghost Island, and it's because we see an old school style of play in the new school era. At least in old school, when there was a pagonging, the characters were more fleshed out, the casting was really good, and so even when a pagonging was happening, you cared about Elizabeth and Roger to the point where when they're getting pagonged, you're like, oh, this is an interesting friendship that's going on. I could care less about the actual pagonging, right? Or, when there's a pagong going on in, Tocantins, where I mean, obviously the JT and Steven and Taj cohort flip, on the or flip most of the Timbiras over. But when the Timbiras start to get picked off, we still care because of the climate. It's so fun, and because of Coach, right? That's old school Survivor versus Ghost Island. When there's a pagonging there, we get nothing. It's just a pagonging, because in this new school era, they're relying on the twists and the advantages to save the game when there starts to be a pagonging, and they did not save the game here in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, we get the great moment of a tie at Final Tribal, but the issue is nobody cares because it's been such a bad season. It was also kind of predictable that it was going to be a close vote. The best part of the season happened in the last 5 seconds of the season. I mean, it's not it. It's not it. Next up, we have Australian Outback. I think Australian Outback, it's just bad. It's bad. I think this is an example of a season that if it happened nowadays, it would easily be the worst season ever. But because it happened in this first 8 seasons of the show, and really the second season, it has that nostalgic feel to it where it's like you can't put this last place. Although there are very, very bad stretches in this season. In fact, there's really just the post merge after Jerry goes is terrible, absolutely god awful. And it might honestly be the worst stretch of episodes in Survivor history. So I do definitely feel like we're looking at a season that has some serious flaws and it's pretty boring for large chunks of it. But it has that old school feel. There are characters that are fleshed out correctly. People have an arc. Colby doesn't win, which I think is good for the season overall, with Tina beating Colby at the end. And so I think overall the season has some positives, although in the end it's just very, very slow. It's a slog, and it's really saved by decent casting. I'll say decent. I know everyone likes to love this cast because half the cast has been back. But that's really only because of the fact that most of them were willing to come back. If half the cast of Borneo wanted to come back, they would have been back by now. With All Stars, they had asked Colleen and Greg, and they both said no, right? And I feel like if Colleen and Greg take up the spots of Alicia and I'm trying to think who came from Australian Outback, who's a dude, somebody who I can't think of, or no, they wouldn't have taken Colby's spot, but Colleen would have taken Amber's spot there. So now you're talking about only 7 returnees for Australian Outback, and I think 4 or 5 for Borneo. So in the end, I do feel like the amount of returnees that come from the season don't really dictate just how bad the season is. The cast is fine, but it's not spectacular by any means necessary. Next up, we have One World. I think a lot of people have this at their last place spot, but I will say the pre-merge while Colton is there is absolutely so fun to watch because Colton is such a great villain. He fits his role perfectly, and I think he's perfect. He's generally dislikable. I'm a person who always roots for the villain, and even then, you have to root against Colton because he's not only does he fit that villainous, but he also fits that wussy and that just dirty person, and I love it because he's a perfect villain. He's actually someone who everybody can root against, and if you're rooting for him, it's just to cause the chaos, which is fun, right? Fair Play is a villain that I actively root for. Colton is a villain that I root for to stay so that I can keep not rooting for him, if that makes any sense. I think Colton saves this season from being in the 41 to 40 spot. I think the rest of the season's got awful. The winner's fine. It's just enough. We don't need to talk about One World ever again. But yeah, I mean, I think the season's saved by Colton. I think the season has a bad stretch from the Colton boot, or the Colton medevac, I should say, to the end of the season. There are a few interesting votes, and I think those first 4 episodes, or 5, I guess, really saved the season. I think the One World twist itself is a really good idea, and that also helped as well. 36, we have Redemption Island. I feel like Redemption Island for me is a season that, I mean, there's a few rounds that are awesome, right? I think the first 3 episodes are not god tier, but they're very, very good. Very, very good episodes, right? because we have the first episode is the premiere, which I think is a top 5 premiere of all time, if not a top 10. The second episode, I believe we get like the whole Christina mess with the idol and Boston Rob, and we get Christina's idol being flushed, and then Matt gets voted out because Rob sees him shaking hands with the other tribe. That's super fun to watch. And then on top of that, in 3, we obviously get the King Russell getting voted out. 3 great episodes. As soon as Russell goes, this from then to the merge is like bottom tier. So it's so bad. Then the merge episode is awesome with the Matt Boot and Boston Rob just absolutely controlling his tribe, buddy system, all that. That's awesome to watch. And then again until really the rest of the season. So there's 4 like really good episodes in this season. That's it. And you can't have 4 out of 15 episodes be good. And I call your season, a top 35 season. This stays at 36 for me. 35, I have Worlds Apart. I feel like Worlds Apart is a great example of a season that it just wasn't in a good spot. I think the cast was fine-ish. I think the issue was that I think the blue collar tribe was casted amazingly. I think both the no collars and the white collars were casted awfully. I think you have Mama C from the white collar. Cricket. I mean, Joe, I guess, from the no collar, I guess. That's 2 people from 12 people that are good casts. The other 10 are absolute duds. Sierra, dud. Haley, dud. Vince, dud. Will, dud. I'm trying to think. Tyler, dud. Max, whatever, sure, I guess. So what is that, 3 out of 12? Not a good success rate for me personally, and that's what keeps it out. I think Rodney, Mike, Dan, Shireen carry the season. And so I feel like without them, this season is probably one of, if not the worst seasons. Also, the fact that it's new school helps it as well. But we really don't get, we get a pagonging of the no collars and then a pagonging of all of the, I think the white collars, right? Yeah, the white collars. And then we get Mike winning out. It's pretty boring, honestly, overall. And it really doesn't allow for a fun and fluid post-merge. At 34, I have Caramoan. I think Caramoan's a tale of really 3 parts. There's, you know what? I don't know. So there's the pre-merge. Obviously, it's probably a top 5 worst pre-merge of all time, if not the worst pre-merge of all time. It's god awful. I think you lose characters like Matt Bischoff, which is unfortunate. You also lose characters like Shamar. I think those are 2 characters that could have helped this post-merge from just being like a flash in the wind. And I'll talk about that right now, which is that I feel like the 3 parts of the season are the finale. I think from there you have the post-merge, and then you have the finale. I think the pre-merge, the post-merge, and the finale. I feel like those are your 3 parts. I think this finale is god awful. I think Eric goes, and then it's an easy Eddie boot as soon as he doesn't win immunity. It's a very, very boring and predictable finale. But the post-merge, aside from even the Corinne boot is her trying to stage a coup and then getting caught. Then you have the 3 Amigos tribal, I believe, where Philip goes. Then after that, you have, I think is it Reynolds going or Malcolm or something? That's fun. I think somewhere in there you get an Andrea boot, and then after that you get a Brenda boot, which is also fun to watch. So I think overall it's definitely a very fun and fluid post-merge. It's just that the pre-merge is god-awful, and nobody wants to watch that. 33, I got South Pacific. I feel like South Pacific for me is a season where I look at it and it's like, you think, oh, that's like in that bad slump of 21 to 24, but I definitely feel like this season tops off that bad stretch. I feel like Nicaragua is higher than this, but I feel like this season has a good argument to be ahead of Nicaragua. I feel like this season, I actually like the idea of all of the, hypocritical religious figures on, religious activities on this season. I actually really like Brandon Hanson this season as a character. I think he's very fun and complex. Coach, although this is the probably the worst version of Coach, even though Coach goes very early and he hears his villains, it's fun to watch Coach, at least in that season. This season, Coach is a full-on villain, and I like it. And I like how Coach is trying to be more of a hero in this season, and he ends up being even more villainous by really shoving his religion and really using it to his advantage and really manipulating several people. And to watch Coach lose at the end there is not very satisfying on a first watch, but watching it back, you realize how delusional Coach was and how he really didn't deserve to win the money. anyway, although I do think that that if Sophie gets a better edit in this season could be in your 20s. But because Sophie doesn't get that good edit, you're disappointed when you see her win. You're like, who is this girl? You know, like it just isn't as fun to watch. If an Albert had won, I feel like that would have been, you know, more fun as well than the Sophie edit that she had gotten, because at least we've seen Albert and his positives and negatives. If they had given Sophie an edit even as good as Albert's was, I feel like you're looking at a much better winner. At 32, I have Gabon. I think Gabon is a season for me where I look at Gabon and everyone says, oh, it's either in your top 5 or in your bottom. No, for me, the Gabon's kind of just like subpar to bad. I mean, you have a pretty lackluster pre-merge. Ace is a nice villain, but Ace can't save a pre-merge on his own. Sugar's not really fleshed out yet as a character until she hits the post-merge and starts flipping back and forth emotionally. Bob is not a fun winner in the end. Obviously, I think the post-merge is definitely the better half of the season for sure. I understand watching Fong lose is fun, but like, is it worth is it really worth putting it like 10 plus spots higher than it would have been if Fong wasn't losing? And I just disagree with that. I think you have a few characters that are really fun. I think the post merge where they throw that out in the ocean, if they had focused more on that, I feel like that would have been a lot more fun to watch. But we obviously get kind of it's not really a pagonging, but I would definitely say when Marcus goes out in that like second swap, I guess you could call it, then we get is it Corinne, Randy going home. I think Bob also would have gone home if he didn't win immunity there. From there, we basically just get the FOM members cannibalizing themselves with Kenny and Krista going. I think it's at 5 and 6 if I'm not mistaken, and then Bob gets to the end kind of off of fluke because Sugar got emotional about her dad or something, which I think is good for tying up the story, but it's not very good for an outcome as far as gameplay wise, because Bob obviously is not the person you want having a shot to win. If Maddie had gotten into that spot and won the season, I definitely think that this season is not at 32 and instead probably at like 26 maybe. I don't know. At 31, I have Nicaragua. I feel like Nicaragua for me is a season I watched that. This is my first season of Survivor. I've never gone back and rewatched it, but from what I remember, it's funny. It's like, I think there's a lot of seasons that are good-ish, but they have a very dark feel, right? Like decent seasons that are good-ish to decent, but they have a dark feel. Like I feel like a season, although All Stars in 41 aren't necessarily good seasons, quote unquote, they're decent and they have a very dark feel to them, right? They're better than Nicaragua, but they're very dark. Nicaragua stays high because of the fact that it's a very light season. It's a very casual based season. Like it's definitely a season good for casuals. It's very, very nice and lighthearted. Obviously there is some mean stuff, but I think overall, even with like I feel like Nyanka, although she's super negative, is also such a cartoonish villain because she's just so immature, and on top of that with the double quit, I feel like honestly you're not missing much with Kelly leaving. I think the issue is with Nyanka leaving. I think if we get a Nyanka getting to like final 5 or 4 and then going, I think that the villain lasts longer on the season. I really don't like Nyanka, which I actually like because there's been a shortage of villains that I actually dislike. Like the only villains that I've really ever rooted against was Peter from Koh Rong. I would say probably Nyanka, and then I would say aside from that, I'm always rooting for the villain. Maybe Bradley, I guess, is a good villain who I rooted against, but almost every other villain I'm rooting for. I root for fair play. I root for Tony and Cagayan. I rooted for Russell. I rooted for Hatch. I rooted for literally so many of the villains because I like villains. It's not that I identify with them, but I like the fact that they're complex people and they're more close to how I am as a person. Obviously, I wouldn't consider myself villainous, but I would definitely consider myself more villainous than heroic. I'm more Russell than I am JT, and I'm willing to accept that. And I feel like that's something that makes these villains very packageable to me. And to top off the 30s, I have All Stars at 30. I think All Stars is a season that isn't as good as this next stretch of seasons in the 20s, but I do feel like it's definitely a season that has some positives. You have Rob and Amber, being a couple and kind of making it to the end. This is the only time it ever happens, and it really creates this now anti-sentiment towards couples, power couples in the game, similar to how Parvati does it with the Women's Alliance, where now if a woman and woman get together, everyone gets very scared for good reason because Women's Alliance is so strong. And I think they did that with a power couple here. It was very fun to watch in the moment. It's sweet for sure, but it's not really enough to save the season. The pre-merge is fun. I wouldn't call it legendary. I'd say it's good to great maybe, or at least the first 5 episodes of the pre-merge. Then we get like that Colby boot, Jerry boot, like stretch of the season. It's pretty lackluster and negative, and the whole Suhawk thing. It's just very negative. Obviously, you get the Lex and Rob. You take care of her. I'll take care of you if you can thing, which is awesome. But then you just get a pagonging where it's Lex and then Kathy and then Cheyenne go out at the merge. That's not really fun to watch. Obviously, Alicia goes out before Cheyenne, but it's just because Cheyenne wins immunity there. It's not a very fun, very climactic vote there. We all know that it's it's going to be Alicia going home in that spot. We know that Big Tom and Jenna are close with Rob and Amber, and obviously Cheyenne's immune, and that really leaves either isn't Rupert also close with Rob and Amber? So that really leaves Alicia kind of left out in that spot, and so it's a pretty obvious boot at that place. I think your best vote out of the entire season for your best round strategically for me is definitely the final 5. I love how Boston Rob basically causes a fight or instigates a fight with Rupert and Big Tom and backs away and watches them sink their own 2 games by yelling at each other. I think that's a brilliant move by him. I think it's probably his best move that he's ever made. Maybe the Matt blindsides were, but even then, that's kind of 2 separate moves put together. I think this is his best single round that he's ever played in Survivor history. I think if he doesn't yell at Tom here in this round, I think he does great, because then he doesn't lose Tom's vote and he wins the game. But I think overall, this is still his best round by far. At number 29, I have Island of the Idols. I feel like Island of the Idols is a season for me that everyone says Island of the Idols is a season that's just so god. Oh my, it's so problematic. Like it's so dark to watch. I really don't think it's that dark of a season. It has one very, very dark round, and the rest of the game is pretty much like chill. I mean, in the end, Dan gets kicked out. Like that's your happy ending there. I think there's one dark round. Like the reason why the season is in the bottom half has nothing to do with Dan. That knocks it down maybe 3 to 5 spots. The reason why it gets knocked down like 10 spots from where it would have been if it were like if it didn't have what I'm about to say, is the fact that in the end there are good, like, every episode is a good episode. There's no like legendary great blindside in this season, and good seasons have not only one of those but several of those, right? Seasons in your like 14 to 7 range have like one really signature blindside. Seasons in that like 6 and up range have several legendary rounds, legendary blindsides and votes and tribals, and this season just does not have one. It doesn't even have one, and that's really its issue. IOI has the 2 like late pre-merge boots where it's like I think it's a tie one round, and then like it's like a steal a vote the other, or I forget, but it's 2 like, oh no, and then it's Kelly giving Jack the idol. So it's really 2 like really fun rounds there. But and then we get to the merge, obviously the whole negative Dan stuff. But really the more important thing from that episode is that we get a boring Kelly boot and a boring Jamal boot, and then after that we get a boring Elizabeth boot. Obviously the Missy blindside is kind of fun to watch, but we also are supposed to root for Missy, I think, in that spot. So I wasn't really happy to watch that. I think from there you get Karishma, who isn't a very likable underdog in the season. You almost can understand why everybody has a disdain for her. So I don't know, it's just very, very tough. It's very, very tough to watch this season, and it's really not even because of the Dan stuff. It's because of other stuff. Panama for me is a season that I liked it the first time I watched it, then I rewatched it, and I was like, this pre-merge is such a slog. I mean, the pre-merge of Panama, aside from the Kasaya 6, there's nothing else in this pre-merge. Lamina is probably, if not the most boring tribe. I know I haven't seen Thailand in its entirety, so maybe I think it's Choi Gai or Suk Jai or whatever. One of those tribes is more boring, but as far as the other 40, I think Lamina is probably the most boring tribe. So boring. I don't know what is the obsession with Astronaut Dan. Like, I feel like everyone like likes him, but I don't really remember ever seeing a big edit for him. Like, I really don't get it. And then as far as, I think it's like Nick and like like I can't like remember their names. Like the dude who goes at the merch boot, and then I think it's Nick is the other guy. I don't know. They're just so forgettable. That whole tribe is just so boring. It's so it's just, I don't know. For me, it's like you can have one sick, like basically what you have in the season is 6 people out of 8 on one tribe that are fun, and then the other 8 are not fun. So that's what, 6 out of 18 people out of 20 people who are fun to watch, and the other 10 plus people are just not fun to watch. I think the season is top heavy. I know everybody calls Cook Islands top heavy, but I feel like this season is more top heavy. I feel like you have Cerise, Shane, I guess you could say Courtney. I really don't think Courtney's that great of a character, but really you have the final 6, really, right? So after Bruce goes, I think you have a pretty iconic final 6 where you have Terry, Cerise, Aris, Danielle, Courtney, and Shane. That's a really, really great top 6. Everybody else in this entire season is so forgettable and so it's like Sally is supposed to be our underdog who we relate to and who narrates the season for us. Like, and she literally just gets voted out at like a weird tribal where Terry doesn't play the idol. It's just so boring. It's just so boring for me personally. Although I love that final 6, that Kasaya 6 minus Bruce, I think is a really, really fun cohort to watch, plus Terry. But I feel like it's just not enough to save the season from being so lackluster and boring for me. Speaking of Cook Islands, I have Cook Islands at this spot. I think Cook Islands, I'll just keep it short for this one. I feel like Cook Islands to me is a season that in itself, in itself, if the story's not there, I think it's still good. I think everyone says, oh, Cook Islands is only good because of the story. No. Like, the pre-merge of Cook Islands is fun. Like, although that there are a lot of forgettable boots, obviously you have a pretty good premiere. I think the premiere is probably one of, if not the weakest episodes of the pre-merge. I think a big reason that the pre-merge seems to be not regarded as good is because the people who get voted out are not edited well, but the boots themselves are very interesting. The season is very strategy heavy. You get Yule and Penner really playing really, really hard in the pre-merge. I think the Flick of Blindside is fun. I think the Cecilia Blindside is fun. I think the woman, I think her name's Christina, who's a cop. Her Blindside is really, really fun to watch it. In my personal opinion, I think the issue with this season is just like the people who get blindsided in the pre-merge are so forgettable that you really don't care. And then in the post-merge, after the I-24 flips Penner in a great merge episode, you get about 3 or 4 episodes in a row that are just absolutely god-awful. And so it's like, it's tough because what you remember from this season is just a story. And once you get past that, you're like, well, this season sucks. But it really doesn't. It's just that the pre-merge had not so great editing. Let's just put it that way. At number 26, I have Africa. I think Africa is a season for me that, I don't know, it's just very average to me. Like, although it's not mathematically average here, I just look at Africa as a very meh season. It's cool pre-merge. I think the tribe swap was needed in this pre-merge, or else we were going to get a pretty boring. Although I feel like the old Samburus, I think that they're called, would have flipped to the Boron tribe. They were already going to be down in numbers anyway, like they being Samburu. So I feel like the tribe swap at least helped a little bit, but it really didn't do much as far as the overall outcome of the season. Obviously, in the end, you get a pretty obvious, final tribal, which I think is always never fun. I don't know. I feel like this is definitely just like an season. It really nothing special in the season for me. I really don't have any special feelings in my heart for the season, and I feel like the seasons I'd say probably past 21. I feel like seasons past 21 for me have a special place in my heart, and we're at 26, so obviously we're not there yet. 25 is Guatemala. I feel like Guatemala for me is a season that has a lot of cool blind sides. I think there's a few really, really fun, like I would call them anti-heroes, but more like villainous people, I guess, being Judd and Jamie. I feel like those are really fun people. I think Danny's edit isn't terrible, which is actually surprising considering that she's such an under the radar player. So I do think that they don't make the same mistake as a South Pacific season where your winner's just not edited in at all. I think honestly, to me, this season it lacks that's the thing is. I would say it lacks like a S tier character, but like you could argue Judd is an S tier character. I think what it lacks for me is a big moment. There's no big moments from the season. It's all like really great moments, but there's no gigantic moment. The biggest moment from the season is probably like Gary's idol play, which is like so forgettable after it happens. That's like I don't know. For me, it's just like there are a lot of fun characters. I think a really good cast. The boot order is mad because there are some people who go pre-merge who are like Brian and the cop who I can't remember her name, and those people for me are fun characters, and I wish they stayed, but the boot order doesn't ruin it for me. And the issue is there's just no like big gigantic iconic moments or tribals, so I feel like that's the issue there. At 24, I got 41. I think 41 to me is a season that, I mean, I don't know how it's snuck up this much. I think part of it is just that it's a new school season that has like new school ideals. Obviously, this is kind of like, we're starting to get into this new school era where it's like now we can no longer call like 40s and the 30s like the same era, because it seems to be a very, very different ideological way of doing the show, I guess is the best way to say it. Like Probes in production just kind of changed their ways this season, and it just feels very weird and different. And it's not really different in a good way. It's not different in like when they hit China, it felt Sarah felt like rejuvenated, different, great. It feels weird, and it feels like they're trying too hard to keep viewers going, and just coming back, every single episode, and it's causing them to actually lose viewers. The finale had, I believe, less than 4 million viewers. Less than 4 million viewers. The average like big YouTuber beats that by a mile. So it's like, I don't know, for me it's just like it's very, very disappointing season, although it is a new school season with characters and casting that is pretty good and editing that is pretty decent as well. The issue is your winner's not edited correctly at all. And overall, the gameplay itself is pretty frigid for a new school season. Not like Ghost Island bad, but it's definitely not as fluid as like a Millennials vs. Gen X or Dave vs. Goliath, or even like an Edge of Extinction season. It's very, very not fluid to me. At 23, I have Blood versus Water. I feel like Blood versus Water season for me that's so average. Like I feel like, I had said before that for me Africa's an average season. I think Blood versus Water is even more average for me. It's just such a predictable boot order at the merge. As soon as Aris goes, which is a pretty easy boot where he's edited as this golden boy who Tyson doesn't like, and Tyson has more of an edit, so obviously someone's going to win out. It's either Aris getting out Tyson or Tyson getting out Aris. And when Aris doesn't go for Tyson, obviously Tyson is going to go for Aris. And that's exactly what happens. Once Aris goes, it's an obvious Vetus boot because it's literally his brother. And then from there, we get a pretty obvious, I believe Tina goes first, and then Katie goes right after. So that's 4 obvious boosts to kick off the merge immediately, similar to a season like HHH. The issue is HHH then picks up and has a great last 4 episodes. Blood vs. Water has a decent last 4 episodes. It's like Sierra boot, kind of fun, Hayden boot, kind of fun. I think the Kale boot is at this point kind of fun. Like it's just it's just there's no, it never really picks up after those 4 bland boots. I will say that the twist itself of Blood vs. Water is this is obviously, in my opinion, the best version of it with the Redemption Island and all of that. I feel like it's definitely done well. I think the issue is that overall there's a few duds in the cast, but overall, I mean, the cast is fine. It's not like god awful. The issue is that you don't have like some S tier personality. Your biggest personality is Tyson, and he plays it pretty low on this season and doesn't go over the top like just super villainous or super funny on this season. He's there to win, which is fun, kind of, but like not really fun to watch from a character perspective. And so that's why this season lands for me at 23. San Juan del Sur is a different story for me. I think San Juan del Sur your winner is non-existent until episode like 10 or something. Obviously, Natalie's run to the end is super fun to watch. I think John Mish is also fun to watch as a character who's like has control of the game, but just doesn't really know how to keep it. I think Jeremy going out earlier in the merge is probably not good for the season overall. If Jeremy could have made it to like 6 or 5 and then got booted out, then you could have gave him like the Rob God edit, which is so much more fun for the season overall. But I also understand, like why the players got him out. Obviously, he's such a big threat, but for the season overall, it's definitely not a good thing. And I think really like the main theme of the season is just pairs that are like, what's his name? Alex. And I think it's it's Alex and something. I can't remember the one who made the merge, but the one, it's Alec and something else. But those brothers, they're all right, if not duds. Missy and Baylor, they're all right. They're probably not duds, but they're all right. Right? Like the good couples go out, either half of them in the pre-merge. Like for example, Natalie and Nadia, half of them goes out first episode, right? Val and Jeremy go out, half in the pre-merge, right? You get like the only full couple that's actually fun to watch who gets to the post-merge is I think it's Josh and Reed, and Josh goes immediately at the merge. So it's a great collection of episodes. There really isn't like a dud episode there. The issue is just like the casting, just like it's not bad, but it's just not good enough. And last but not least, in this top half of the seasons, I got Borneo. I think Borneo is a season for me that the reason why it gets this high is just really one, it's obviously just the first season. I mean, it just has like that feel where it's like this is just like, these people have no idea what they're creating. They have no idea that they are going to be seen by 50 million people every single day and have 100 plus people see, the finale. It's crazy. And then it's just like this feeling of like Richard Hatch, figuring out the game as he goes. I love rooting for Richard, so to see him win here is so fun to watch. And then I think lastly, this finale episode, because it like you leave off on this episode, it just leaves you with an amazing taste in your mouth after the season. The finale is amazing. I think it's probably a top 5 episode of all time, honestly. And I think it just shows that it doesn't matter what era you're in, a good episode is a good episode, period. And this is a legendary episode, and I really like that it was the most viewed episode in the show's history, really, ever. Next, we have Amazon. I feel like Amazon is definitely the story of raw obsession, first and foremost. I think Jenna gets a sufficing edit. I actually don't think that I have an issue with the Jenna edit. And notice that a common key factor of how a season does is how the winner is edited. Season like 41, if Erica's edited better, the season flies up. A season like South Pacific, if Sophie's edited better, the season flies up. But because the winners aren't edited well, the season it goes down at least five, if not maybe even 10 spots. And I think that's the real issue, is if the right person doesn't win, you have a really, really wrong problem. And it's not that the right person is the person who I like, it's the person who has been edited so that I like them, or at least I can respect their game. In other words, the viewer does not have to agree with the jury's choice, but the viewer needs to understand why the jury picked that player. And it should not be a shock like Erica, where we have no idea why she was picked to win the game by this jury. We just have no idea, zero idea. And that's really the issue, is that there are some winners where you just don't know why they're winners at all. But getting back to Amazon, I think this is probably the second best version of the men versus women. I think Vanuatu does it better, but not really by production's doing. I do think that production does really try and force the men lusting for women on this season, versus Vanuatu has none of that. Absolutely zilch. And so I think overall you have a lot of the young guys just kind of, lusting over the girls, which is fun to watch for an episode. But then when you get like 5 episodes into it, it gets really, really boring and just kind of annoying and like whatever. I hate when people say that it's like offensive. It's not. It's just young boys being like horny. That's weird. It's weird. That's how it works. I don't know what else to say. It's just like, it's normal, but it's definitely weird to watch on national television. But I think, again, Rob post-merge, that's all I need to say. Those like 4 or 5 episodes after the Roger vote are just golden, right? Because you have the Roger vote, then you have the Dave vote, But then, okay, yeah, the Dina blind side, that's when Rob's game kicks off. And from the Dina blind side to the very last episode is some of the best Survivor ever. And it's all really because of Rob. And Rob's gameplay almost infects the others. And now you have Jenna and Matt and Heidi playing these cutthroat games just like how Rob is. And it's really, really good. I think from the episode not after the merge, but the episode after that episode to the finale is a great stretch of Survivor, and the rest of the episodes are decent. The issue is the pre-merge is just like it goes on and on. It's the same stuff. It's the same flirting back and forth. It's just not really fun to watch, especially like that post-swap where you see people like Gene go. I think Gene goes in that spot, and I think Shauna goes. Two pretty boring boots. I think overall it's just a pretty lackluster pre-merge with a very fun stretch in the post-merge. But I think like that post-swap and early merge sections, those meet, and that's about a 4 episode stretch where you're just not really entertained when you watch the TV show. And that's just my personal opinion. 19, I got Game Changers. I think Game Changers is definitely a season to me that I see and I'm like, okay, great. The cast, it looks decent, right? The cast looks decent, right? There's no crazy twists. I think the legacy advantages is pretty balanced, right? But then you have a cast where 5 of the duds on the cast get to like the final 10, and that's really where the season falls apart, where you have people like Michaela and Haley and Sierra and these people who you just don't want to get to the end getting to the end, and that's really your biggest issue. I mean, aside from Sari, Ty, I mean, I guess you could argue Culpepper and Sarah, but before the season, aside from Sari, Ty, I don't know who else. Like, are you really happy with anyone who makes the merge? I guess Ozzy maybe. So what is that, 3? Like, it's just a lot of like all of the good players go out in the pre-merge in the season, and it really hurts the season. And this is what I mean by a good boot order. Sometimes you just need that luck where if you get your best players to get to the post-merge, you're set. Whereas if like Russell Hantz goes out pre-merge in Samoa, you probably get a bottom 5 season. But because of that, the season's still upcoming on my list, and it just shows one player or several players who are A tier or S tier players need to get to or past the merge. It's necessary 110,000%. And if they don't, you have a serious problem with your season overall, in my personal opinion. Season 18, I got Edge of Extinction. I think Edge of Extinction for me is a season that I think it's pretty fluid, and I can really appreciate that. I think the issue is, 1, your winner was on the season for like 2 days, and 2, the overall like vibe of the post merge to me is like, I really don't know half the people there. Like, honestly, like there's a guy who's like bigger with brown hair, like straight brown hair, and I have no idea what his name is because he was from the Kama tribe. The fact that the Manu tribe decimates is fun to watch, but it leaves the Kama tribe under-edited. And when they get to the merge, the majority of the people who are standing in Rick's way or standing in Chris's way are all people who I really don't know. For real. Aside from maybe, I would say Ron. Aside from Ron, I really can't think of anybody who got edited well up until their boot. Like, I feel like people like Aurora, they really didn't get edited well until their boot episode. Someone like Julia, who went home in that crazy tribal, doesn't get edited well until her boot episode there, right? It's like people just don't really get edited well. It's just not good editing style, and it's really not the production's fault. It's the editor's fault, because even when you have a tribe that's just got all of this winning going on, you can still edit them well. The beauty tribe still got edited somewhat well in Koah Rong, even though they all won every single immunity, right? Ty and Michelle and even Julia, they all got edited very, very well. And even Caleb, for when he was in the game, they all got edited extremely well for where they were at in the game. And I think it's definitely necessary where when a tribe wins a lot of challenges, you need them to definitely get a better edit than just like they would have gotten based on their amount of screen time, because they're not going to go to tribal. So you need that you need to see them on your screen for more time than you would the average tribe. Number 17, I got Vanuatu. I feel like Vanuatu for me is a season that it really just shows that you can have a pretty lackluster first 10 episodes. And if you just have a really good stretch, it can boost you up. A season like Amazon shows you that perfectly. Seasons like Marquesas show you that. And I think Vanuatu is among those seasons where you have a pretty decent pre-merge, decent average, maybe subpar at worst, right? And then you get a Pagonging, so we're just like not very fun. Although the characters in the season are awesome, so it kind of carries that Pagong part of the season because of the fact that the women are so fun to watch, and the men are as well. But then when we get to Chris, it's just Chris versus all the women from that round final 7 to the end. It's just an amazing series of events where he just decimates all these women. And it's really really fun to watch. Amy, the fall of Amy, right, and then Twyla, just basically like slowly making her game better, but then ruining it by doing all of the stuff that made her game better, right? She puts herself in a better shot to get to the end, but hurts her game by flipping on these women. I think the final 7 vote is a really, really fun one to watch. Eliza and Amy's little combo that they have, and then Eliza just going on voting for Amy in the end. That's super fun to watch. Chris, convincing Julian and Eliza that maybe he'll flip to them is super duper fun to watch. And then him convincing Eliza that, hey, I'm gonna flip back to you, and then no, it's super fun to watch. And then when it gets to the end and it's Chris and Twyla, to be quite fair, I'd be fine with the Twyla win here as well. I think they both got really really good edits. And I think you go in knowing that Twyla's probably not going to win, but you're okay with that because you also like Chris. Amazing location also. I just have to say these volcanoes look amazing. At 16, we have HHH. Again, I've said it. I think I've said it a lot, but I'll keep it relatively short. But HHH is a season. Really, it has a decent pre-merge with some fun boots, but not enough for it to be considered like great. It's good at best, if not subpar. And then you have 4 boots in a row that are just god awful. I mean, you have the entire healer tribe gone, absolutely gone. You have, I believe Jessica comes first, and then you have Cole, and then you have Joe, and then you have Desi. I think it's in that order. And those are 4 boots that are just super obvious. But then you get that JP blindside, and from the JP episode with the spaghetti reward all the way to the end, you have 5 fantastic episodes with balanced out characters and a winner that's satisfying, although kind of controversial, very very satisfying in the end. A somewhat competitive final 3, although not really, but it's competitive enough. You get a fun runner-up. Like everyone gets a fun edit there, and I feel like overall it's definitely very fun to watch. The issue is you have 4 post-merge episodes that are god-awful. You cannot have a good, like a top 15 season where 4 post-merge episodes are bad. That's just not possible to have. At 15, I have Palau. So, I really like Palau. I think on the Oolong tribe, you don't really remember the gameplay that was had on that tribe because it's like so pre-merge, but there was a lot of gameplay on that tribe. Stephanie backstab a lot of people on that tribe. She actually becomes pretty dislikable before she's the last one on the island, but no one remembers that who watches the show, because you remember her being on the island alone, so you like her. But she was quite the cutthroat person, and I think it showed in Guatemala, but I think overall, for sure, I think Palau is a season where the tribe that wins all the challenges actually gets edited well, and so we actually care about them. And so when it's just them left, we actually know who Tom is, we know who Ian is, and we know who Katie is. And then just see like how the game plays out. Kobe going, and then Karen going, and then all these fun boots. And then that like final 2 episodes where we get like the downfall of Ian is so fun to watch for me, and a satisfying winner in Tom. I think overall this season is a great season for me, and I think it's definitely a nice refresher if you just want some nice old school Survivor that still has some gameplay there. At 14, I have Marquesas. I feel like Marquesas is definitely your best old school season. Like obviously, Pearl Islands is still on the list, but I feel like Marquesas is your best like season from that like early to 2000s, right? Because Pearl Islands, you're starting to get towards mid 2000s, but I feel like with I feel like the first 4 seasons are like, I'd say that really the first 5 are your old school seasons, and then with Rob Session, you get like you're starting to get towards the puberty stage of Survivor, right? So I do definitely feel like this is the best of the old school seasons, because we have our first big flip. We have Boston Rob and the pre-merge being awesome. We really have a great like 4 or 5 stretch, episode stretch from, I believe, the Hunter blindside in the pre-merge where Rob's doing all the mafioso stuff, all the way until the flip on John Carroll in the vote after Boston Rob goes, and in the episode after that. I feel like those like 4 or 5 episodes are awesome to watch. I think it's quite fluid gameplay, and then on top of that, after the Rotus are gone, we then get pretty fluid gameplay where we get we get a pretty live tribal at 5 where Sean goes, and then from there we get Vesepia clutching up in her immunity win, which really helps the season out there, because then Kathy makes the deal with Vesepia to tie it up. From there we get a rock draw, where we should have gotten a fire making challenge, or no, what we should have gotten is Pascal probably going home, although because it's at 4, I think you probably get a fire making challenge between Pascal and Kathy, where I think Kathy probably doesn't win. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Does Pappy win that? I feel like let's go with this scenario where Pappy wins that. Then we get Vesepia, Pappy, and Nalia, where I'm guessing Vesepia probably wins the last challenge, if not Nalia. If Nalia wins, she's taking Pappy, and if Vesepia wins, she's taking Nalia. So Nalia goes either way and probably loses against both of them. So I don't know. I think overall the season's pretty fun to watch. It's very fluid for an old school season, and I think you can thank Boston Rob, Kathy, and Vesepia for that. Next, I have Philippines. I think it's a really fun story in the pre-merge of this that decimated tribe. I think it's fun to see 2 people come out of it instead of just one, like in Palau. But I definitely feel like it's fun to watch. You really do have these 2 that come from nothing, start from nothing, and then grow throughout the game, get through all these votes, and one of them wins. One of them gets really close to win, and one is the winner, one's the fan favorite. It really just works out perfectly in that sense. You also have the other 2 tribes being fun as well, with the Tandang tribe kind of self-destructing, but also having fun characters in RC and Abby and Pete, and all of these characters that are so fun to watch, artists, and then on top of that, the Cowbell tribe, you have Penner, and you have Jeff Kent, and you have Carter, and you have all these people that you actually care about, like that are genuinely fun to watch. Like I think this is a really fun season. I think even Lisa and Scoopin, they're like really fun to watch as well. And I think overall it's definitely one of those seasons where even if it's not your favorite, you can't say that it's a bottom 20 season. There's no way. It's a universally known good season. At 12, I have Samoa. I think Samoa is a great season. I think obviously Russell carries the season. I love watching Russell play. I think it's so fun. I think this is the more fun version of Russell because it's easier to root for him. In Heroes vs. Villains, he's such a dick to everybody. It's kind of hard to root for Russell. But in Samoa, we get more of a positive Russell edit, and I think it shows because it's so much more fun to root for him in this season. Although I root for him in both seasons, I think we definitely get more of a positive edit from him in this season. I think it really helps his chances of winning the game, and definitely the chances of this season being better overall. Obviously, you have all the weather, which I think is fun. Although I think it does kind of hurt the pre-merge ish. I think them not swapping was obviously good for the story. The 4 getting to the merge. You have that, all of them flipping on Eric at the merge, but then after that, you get the Russell idle play 1, and then you get, I believe, a flip where they flip John Fincher, and they flip him to make it a tie vote. Oh, no, they flip him as well as Shambo to make it 6-4. Then they vote out John Fisher, so now it's 5-4, and they have Shambo on their side. Then they pick off the rest of the Galoos, and then they cut off Jason and Shambo, and then that leaves Russell in a spot where he just has to beat Brett, and he does it at the end, which I think is super fun to watch. The issue is he doesn't win the game. If Russell wins the game here, I think you get a great season because the winner deserves it, and I think you get a very rare occurrence where a dominant win is actually fun to watch because Russell has to play from the bottom. Usually dominant winners play from the top, but Russell would be one of the best winners, and he would have done it from the bottom, which would have been even more fun to watch than like a Boston Rob or a Kim dominant win in their respective seasons. 11, I got Koah Rong. I think Koah Rong is a season for me that just has so many fun characters. I think the casting on the season is one of the best casts of all time. I think behind Dave vs. Goliath, and I guess maybe Cagayan. I think it's definitely around there for the third or fourth best newbie cast of all time. I think it beats out Millennials vs. Gen X. I think it beats out 41's cast. It's a very, very good cast. I mean, you have Ty, you have Sydney, you have Michelle, you have Aubrey, you have, I mean, even Joe like fits his archetype pretty well. You have Nick Majorana, you have the two villains in Jason and Scott. I mean, you just have such fun people. You have Caleb from the pre-merge, you have Peter from the pre-merge. You know, you have all these people that are genuinely fun to watch. Like they're just fun. Like everybody fits their role how they're supposed to, and they're still intellectually capable. You know, I think Ty is obviously such a fun like main character of this season, and I think overall, I think if Ty gets second place in this season, and I think if Aubrey wins the season, Ty gets second, and Michelle gets third, this season goes down as a top 7 or 8 season. But because of the fact that your fan favorite gets like no votes and has no shot, and then you get kind of a shocking win where your other fan favorite also loses the game, who probably should have won the game, I think it definitely shows, you know, just not a very satisfying end for a lot of people. But I think overall I'm fine with a Michelle win this season. I've kind of come to terms with that. But I think it's not nearly as bad as a Natalie White win or an Erica win. You know, I think it definitely has merit to it for sure. And we have our top 10. At 10, I definitely have Heroes vs. Villains. I know a lot of people have Heroes vs. Villains in their top 5, but I think that Heroes vs. Villains for me is an exclusively and only 10. I think at best it's 9 or 8. I think Heroes vs. Villains has a really good pre-merge. I mean, that's the thing. It's like the first episode's pretty boring. Second episode's pretty boring. I think the third episode is I think that's also that's like it's a Stephanie boot or something. I think no. That's so the first episode has Sugar. The second one we see Stephanie go. Then we see Randy go. That's like 3 episodes in a row that aren't very fun. But then the episodes start to like really pack a punch there, you know, leading to what we like to, you know, what we see as the audience in like a string of several really, really fun votes. Where we have the Tyson boot episode. We have the Coach and Jerry, you know, flipping, and then Russell flipping on Coach, Russell playing from the bottom. It's just so much fun stuff, and a really, really fun merge vote, for, you know. But then we also get a Pagong of the Heroes, which is not very fun to watch. Then we get the season kicked back into gear with the Danielle boot, and then it goes right back when Colby and Rupert get booted out. So again, it's just Pagongings and then stop, and then Pagongings and then stop, and then the finale is aight. You know, it's aight, but it's nothing super special. And so I do think that overall this season isn't as good as people say it is, but it's still a good season at least, and it's a great cast. At number 9, I have Tocantins. I feel like for me, Tocantins is just so fun. It's such a light season. Like again, as I said earlier, with a season like Nicaragua, that's so like fun for it's just free and fun for casuals. Tocantins is that, except it's also good, you know, good for gameplay. The characters are better, the casting is better. Coach is one of, if not the best characters in Survivor history, and I think it's just this season fits exactly what it needs to be, which is fun, very casually based, so it's very easy to follow. It's not very strategically complex and complicated. And the story and comeback story of JT and Steven, and then the JT win overall, and, you know, encapsulates a very, very fun arc of the Jalpal tribe and the fall of the Timbira tribe, which is a very, I wouldn't call it a villainous tribe, but it definitely has Coach and Tyson, so it's definitely around there for sure. Next up, I have China. I think China for me is a season that I like. China. I think China is a season that is strategically ahead of its time. I think China is at a time in which we had seasons like Fiji and, you know, Panama that are very strategically baseline, with a few players that kind of changed the game in Yaman and Earl and like Suri and Panama. But aside from that, you have a bunch of people who just aren't really playing the game very hard. And then you get China. You have a lot of people playing the game hard. John Robert playing the game hard. Todd playing the game hard. Amanda playing the game hard. I mean, even James thinks he's playing the game hard until he gets played himself. But I feel like PG playing the game hard. Like there are so many people in this season that are playing the game hard. I think the boot order for this season is absolutely pitch perfect. You have all of the people who are fun characters but not good game players go home in the pre-merge, right? Crazy Dave, Sharia, right? I'm trying to think. The wrestler, Ashley, I think that's what her name is. You have Chicken, all these people that are your lesser characters and your lesser game players go home, and then at the merge, you get the tribe that we like better, the Red Tribe, Fei Long, ends up staying and booting out these Zanhu members, but PG stays the longest, which is the most complex and fun character out of these Zanhus. And so that really works out there too. I think the boot order for the season is fantastic. The winner is super satisfying. Great final travel. Overall, just a great season. At number 7, I got Winners at War. I think Winners at War is obviously a great cast. I think the gameplay in the season is almost too fluid, where it's the point where like you left almost every episode genuinely confused. And I'm a super fan, and I left every episode genuinely confused. And then I would get on YouTube back. This is back when I didn't do YouTube for Survivor, and I would hop on YouTube and go to the specialists, and they would be counting votes or trying to make sense of a tribal, and then I'd go to RHAP, and they would be arguing over whether or not a person voted for who. Like, no one knew anything that was going on in really this pre-merge or post-merge. I think specifically like the Tyson vote was really one where not one person on the internet knew what happened with that vote. And that's a serious problem, because out of the millions of people watching the episode, they should portray it well enough so that at least one person knows what's going on. No one knew what was going on, and then we get votes like the Jeremy vote that are pretty complicated, and just kind of like what just happened, and like the like the merge for Winners at War, just confusing. Like we got reasoning for why everyone went home, but sometimes the votes just kind of flew out of nowhere, and they just did not have enough screen time to portray across such a complicated and strategically advanced game. And that's really the issue that keeps the season out of this top 5. At number 6, I have Millennials vs. Gen X. Obviously, you have such a fluid pre-merge, right? And then you have such a great post-merge. I think the issue with the season is, one, your winner isn't like some S-tier player like a Tony, right? Or a Jeremy, right? It's just not like that. And then on top of that, your other 2 players that are in your final 3 with Adam are both people who are under-edited to an extent. Ken a lot more until the end, and then Hannah, she had a decent edit, but not an edit necessarily that was sufficing to where she ended up in the end. I think overall, also not having a big villain in this post-merge hurts. I think they tried to make like Zeke the villain almost, which is kind of like weird because Zeke's so positive. Or maybe they tried to make Taylor the villain because he stole the food, but he was gone so quick that we didn't really have a villain, post, I think, final 10, I think. So it's just tough because everyone was so likable that you almost didn't have anyone to root against, making the season just kind of like a bunch of people who you like, which isn't very fun to watch. But it also is very fun to watch because the gameplay was just so freaking good. At number 5, I got Per Islands. I think Per Islands is your best OG season. It's so good. It's just absolutely amazing. I think Per Islands for me is a season where it starts out great, it goes through great, and ends great. I feel like from the first episode to the last episode, there is always a good stretch. Even after Fair Play goes, it's still great. After the Fair Play Lie episode, it's still great. It's great until the very last episode. Your villain makes it all the way to the end, and then gets booted out at the last second, which works perfectly. You have the biggest hero and probably the biggest villain in the entire franchise history in this one season, which is awesome. So I think overall, this works perfectly for Survivor and the viewer watching this season. I think the season wraps itself up perfect in a bow. I think if the winner was edited better, or just like overall better as a player, I feel like if Lil had won this season, it would have been very questionable. But with Sandra winning, it's like she's the better option out of the 2, but you're still like, who? What? At number 4, I have Micronesia. I feel like Micronesia is a season that is just so good, especially like that stretch from the Aussie blindside to the really the rest of the entire season. I think really from that Aussie blindside to the end of the season is the best Survivor that you will ever see. I don't care how new school it gets, how many idols. That is the best stretch of episodes that you will ever see in Survivor history, in my personal opinion. I think it's awesome. I think it's prime Survivor, and I think if you want to talk golden age Survivor, that's it for sure. Number 3, I have Cambodia. I think Cambodia is a perfect example of the fact, the reason why the 30s is so good is because as annoying as the idols can get, they're really really fun to work with, especially when you have seasoned players like the players in Cambodia who play with them, play around them, and play themselves out out of the game and then into the majority with them. I think there's the cast in this season isn't developed as good as it could have been, but the gameplay is just so fluid and fun to watch that honestly it really doesn't matter if you don't care about Fishback, right? Because Fishback is you care about the idol that Fishback has, and that's really all that matters in this season. And I think that really just puts it so high on the list because I'm such a fan of fluid gameplay and idle plays and things like that. And so personally for me, that this season is a dream. Number 2 for me is Cagayan. I think Cagayan had always been my number 1 until I watched it, David vs. Goliath, because I had to go through all of the seasons, basically knowing the winner. But I for me, it's always been a season for me, Cagayan, that it's perfect. It's lighthearted, it's fun, it's strategically interesting, but it's also casual friendly. There are three S tier characters, 3 full S tier characters that could probably carry a season on their own, and then you have some A and some B tiers, and it's just overall it's a great season with a perfect boot order. And I mean, there's nothing that I can't say about the season that hasn't already been said in past videos of mine. And at number 1, I have David vs. Goliath. I love this is how a 2-tribe season needs to play out for it to work out. You do not want both tribes going in 6-6 and just battling it out. We saw that in both Redemption Island and South Pacific, and we saw it not really work 2 times in a row. I feel like it's very obvious at this point that you want one tribe going in with lower numbers and then them fighting back. And really, in a perfect world, you'd want them losing the numbers after they fight back and get them, then losing the numbers and then getting them back again. That's really fun. And so I don't know. For me, I think this season it was very fluid, but we also got to know each player very very well. The gameplay was just like it was so fun. Like it felt almost as fun as Cagayan's. I think what puts this season over it for me is characters like Christian just kind of hit with me in a different spot than characters like Spencer and Cass and Tony, and that's just my personal opinion. And that is all 40 seasons ranked. You guys wanted it, I delivered. We got an hour and 5 minutes, so but hopefully we're able to continue series like this. If you guys like this sort of ranking content, let me know in the comments. If not, let me know in the comments. Either way works. I'm exhausted. I can't even move or talk. This took a long time to record. It's going to take a long time to edit, so let's just get on it now. Again, none of this happens without you guys. I'm just a weird guy speaking into a weird microphone. Next week's video is going to be on responding to hate comments part 2. We're doing it. You guys asked for it, and now we are going to look through more ridiculous hate comments that help my channel grow. So stay on the lookout for that. And that's it, guys. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. Leave a like.